My name is Daniel Bastos. This is my colleague Fabio Giubilo. So we are researchers in BT's research labs at the Industrial Park. And we are here to present our work in GDPR in IoT scenarios with a focus on privacy implications. So GDPR is the most comprehensive legislation about online activity that there is right now being applied. And it started on the 25th of May. It began being implemented in all European countries and superseded the Data Protection Directive to give users more control about their data. And any company that holds data about European citizens must comply with GDPR. And penalties for non-compliance are quite high, as high as 4% of the global revenue, or 20 million euros. So the compliance is a must for companies. Let's start by looking at concepts and definitions of GDPR. I'll give an IoT scenario. We have a data subject, a data controller, and data processor. So, for example, I'm at home with my girlfriend, and I say, Alexa, I want a pizza. And I have an Amazon Echo, and the Amazon Echo listens to my command. And it contacts Amazon, and it says, OK, Daniel wants a pizza. Let's contact Domino's Pizza, because it knows it's my favorite pizza. And then Domino's Pizza receives my payment card details and contacts MasterCard and does the payment. And this happens with me being the data subject. So it's my data, Amazon being the data controller, which holds the purpose of this data and will communicate with the data processor that receives my details, so Domino's Pizza, and then the payment card by the MasterCard. And this involves two different things which are important. So the consent that I give, that they use my data, and also risks of data breaches happening throughout this whole process. So, and looking at IoT scenarios, it's not clearly stated where the data controllers and the data processors are. So you can look at this and say that I have an account on Domino's Pizza, so Domino's Pizza can also be a data controller, for example. And this is a problem in IoT because the joint data controllers are then difficult to deal with whose data is owned by, for example, and how do they control it, how do they share blame if there is a data breach, for example. So this is an important thing. Let's now look at the principles. So GDPR states multiple principles. So data accuracy, the data needs to be accurate. Security, data needs to be confidential, and looking at integrity. Data needs to be collected as minimal as possible, so not collected at all if not necessary, and also collected only for the purpose of what is being used. Also, there are retention periods, so for example, 5 years, in order to also have later accountability. So for example, when a data breach happens, we need to know exactly where the data has been and who has been responsible for controlling it. And also fair, lawful, and transparent processing, which is important also because we need to, because it's a piece of legislation, we need to be able to then, in a case of data breach, charge a company, for example, for penalties, and we need to have this kind of transparent processing to be able to know exactly what happened. Let's move on to the rights and obligations of the data subjects, controllers, and processors. So, data subjects have mostly rights. So, right to what? Right to access. So we can ask, for example, Amazon, what data do you have on me? And then correct if, for example, there are slight problems of accuracy, for example. And we can also ask to be forgotten. So, for example, I can ask Domino's Pizza, I don't like your pizza anymore. Please forget my data and delete it. And also the right to withdraw consent at any time, which is also quite a big challenge for IoT. And the right to data portability. Again, I can ask Domino's Pizza to change my data to another company that provides pizza also. So this is important. Also for data processors and data controllers, they need to implement privacy by design and by default. Again, in IoT, this is a challenge. We will talk about this. They also need to do reporting of breaches with the data protection officers, and also notify the data subjects. And also cooperate with data protection agencies, which are public entities in each member state of the European Union. So now, challenges in IoT environments. To implement GDPR, we must think about consent, because withdrawing of consent at any time, it's quite a challenge in IoT devices. So because there are multiple devices and they communicate with each other, the data subject, when withdraws its consent, every device needs to comply with this withdrawal. And this is a hard challenge for IoT. Then data minimization. Again, when sensors collect data, they collect data in raw state. They don't know exactly how to figure out, okay, this piece of data is important and can be used. This piece of data, it's not important and shouldn't be collected. This transparent processing and right to be forgotten, it's also a challenge, because when you think of the growth in IoT and look at a forecast of 50 billion devices by 2020, and when you think of companies trying to figure out where the data of this specific customer is present, they have to look at millions of devices maybe, and also communicate with other companies, and this is going to be a hard challenge to comply. Also because when data protection authorities go through every document, accountability needs to be really well made. Data breach reporting, again, with 72 hours to comply with the reporting of a data breach, looking at every device and every place that the data has been present, and if some other companies need to be contacted, is going to be a hard challenge. And last but not least, privacy by design and data security. And this is the topic we are going to focus next. And it's also a challenge because IoT devices don't have much power, and applying cryptographic primitives is a challenge. It's hard, and sometimes we see many companies going to market with very less security features. Okay, I will give the word now to my colleague Fabio.
Yeah, you can go. Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon. I'm Fabio, and I will cover the privacy part of this presentation. So let's start with privacy and GDPR. How would you define privacy? How would you define, because it's a broad concept, how would you define in a digital context specifically for IoT? Well, I found this definition from Cambridge Dictionary that says it's someone's right to keep their personal matters and relationships secret. So where do we find it in the GDPR? We find in Article 32, where it is clearly stated that controllers and processors, that my colleague Daniel has showed, must implement effective privacy-preserving mechanism. So usually we are talking about anonymization and pseudo-anonymizations. These are two techniques that they aiming at the same thing, which is delinking personal information, but the way they accomplish it is different, because anonymization is the act of suppressing personal information that is actually defined as PII, personal identifiable information, that could be a name, an address, but also a taste, if I like something, if I don't like something else. And so with anonymization, I destroyed this information. Pseudo-anonymization, and an example is the application of hash function. That is an example of anonymization. Pseudo-anonymization, on the other hand, is a replacement of this precious information with other information, such as a token. And tokenization is an example of. And we have also ISO 27001, which is, as you probably know, is a standard and is a certification scheme for cybersecurity management for organizations. And it is here because if your organization is aligned with this ISO standard, it gives you an advantage to be aligned also with GDPR, although they are not the same thing. So now I will talk to you about two different scenarios, and I will raise some privacy concern that can actually happen. The first scenario is in a smart home scenario. So in context, so we have devices like TV, bed, HomePods, lights, fridge, toothbrush, and smart readers. All of them, they need to be connected to the internet because they provide very important services. TV may provide a tailored guide for what you like most. A bed can provide some sleep analysis, so to help you with your habitude. And HomePod to order things online or to switch on off the lights. And so on the smart readers to improve your energy consumption. So an example. But how about data ownership? How about the term and conditions agreement? Because we always agree. Of course, I don't know how many of you, but I never read that because it's so long. And are we still on charge of this data that this device they collect? Are we still the owner? Or we are actually giving up about the ownership? And what could happen if something goes wrong? This is an example. This is a case that happened in the USA where a TV manufacturer, Vizio, agrees to pay around $2 million because the television that they were manufacturing and selling, they were actually spying. So they got caught, essentially. But there are also other threats because we don't know if these devices, they are actually collecting more data than they are supposed to. How can I know that? How can I know how these data are actually protected in their cloud, in the vendors? How can I know if they are actually sold to third parties? So this is the first use case. The second, I think, is more dangerous because it's about healthcare. And essentially, it's about wearable devices. So like the Fitbit or any devices that can actually collect data about our person. So like the heart rate. And why this is dangerous? Because if we hypothesize a scenario where an insurance company is trying to sell me a policy and they know that I have, maybe I might have some heart disease because they can actually get my heart rate from one of these devices. And they might have also other information, I don't know, like from a smart fridge, so they might know my diet, what I buy, the food, so maybe they know I always go to McDonald's. Maybe they will assume that I'm more likely to have some heart attack or something, so I will be charged more. Because this is not like a password, this is something that is personal. We cannot change our heartbeat or so on. So now I will show you some mitigation approaches that I designed with Daniel. These are in an early stage and are high-level points. And they are a mitigation, so they are not like a fix to what I already showed you, this privacy concern. So all these approaches, they are based on trust. So how much the user trusts the IoT vendors. So I have defined some metrics. This is the easiest one, and it is the case when the user actually trusts a lot the vendors. So essentially, I have my smartphone with my IoT devices. I have the edge router, and all the outgoing traffic is unclear to the vendor, and we are trusting the vendor to take care of the anonymization of my personal data. So I need to have a lot of trust in the vendor. It's very easy to implement, but the risk is very high because I don't know if that vendor is actually anonymizing and if they do what they say. The second scenario is a little bit different because here we have the concept of anonymization as a service. So what we do is we don't trust the vendor, but we trust someone else to take care of the anonymization. Because this could be a case where, for example, the vendor is in another country and we might not trust that country, and we have the anonymizer service, such, I don't know, BT could do one day, that we might trust. So say, okay, I trust you, so I hand over the anonymization to you. But again, there are challenges because, of course, this trusted third-party anonymizer acts as a proxy, as a middleware, so it has to handle all the requests. And it's not really easy to implement because the service that the device provides, it might stop to work. The last approach is a paranoid approach because we trust no one. So what we would like to do is to apply the anonymization locally in our home. So essentially, we should embed some kind of anonymizer in our router at home, in our edge router, that should intercept all the IoT traffic, and before sending to the vendor, he essentially properly anonymize the traffic. But this is very difficult to implement because this is very easily to stop, to break the service to actually work. And I think with this we have concluded. So thank you very much for your attention.